Hey there again, TikTakers! Surely many of you have heard the stories of people who became millionaires from cryptocurrencies, but do you know how they actually work? We'll try to explain it in this video, so listen up because it's gonna be a bumpy ride. Cryptocurrencies can be considered virtual monetary systems, although the virtual coins in these systems have no value derived from the material they are made of, as it happens with silver and gold. They also don't depend on any government or institution to operate, only supply and demand. So we could say that the value of cryptocurrencies is that which people give to them. So, as more people become interested in cryptocurrencies, just like with other kinds of items, the more their value increases. The first cryptocurrency to be created, pioneering the entire sector, was Bitcoin. However, nowadays, there are hundreds of other cryptocurrencies available. They were given this name due to their encrypted nature, which means they are protected through special keys, tiktakers. This makes them pretty attractive because it's difficult to steal them or hack them. Doing transactions with traditional money can be expensive and may require many intermediaries, while with cryptocurrencies, the costs tend to be low and the transactions quick. Moreover, these transactions are also anonymous. Bitcoin was created due to the financial crisis of 2008. An individual or a group of people, calling themselves Satoshi Sakamoto, had the idea of using technology and the internet to try to get out of the traditional monetary system. And when we say system, tiktakers, we mainly refer to governments and banks. Satoshi devised a process in which one person can transfer value to another without having to go through an intermediary. Here's the thing. On one hand, an internet of information exists, which opens the doors to thousands of pages to look for information and entertainment. And on the other hand, there is also an internet of value. In this case, Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency which changed everything. Its creation was such a technological milestone that many consider it the Industrial Revolution, but for the internet. Electronic money did exist before, but to transfer it between people, banks were always a necessary intermediary and would always take a commission. This is why cryptocurrencies mostly use a technology known as blockchain. Basically, a decentralized system where each transaction carried out is called a block and has a unique and unrepeatable code to identify it. In this system, said block and all of its information is then validated and registered permanently in all copies of the blockchain database in the network, thanks to special users. And this is all relatively easy to do since anyone can install Bitcoin software in their computer or phone. In other words, we can see those operations and verify that the money exists in the network, although it is all virtual. The processed block is then connected to other already existing transactions blocks, forming a huge chain. And so, the users in the network with their thousands of computers connected throughout the world replace the traditional intermediaries. Cryptography is based on math, which makes it extremely reliable. It could happen that one single user validates a transaction wrongly, but since there are thousands of people connected to the network at the same time, the possibility of that wrong transaction being registered or hacking the blockchain database is almost null. This is thanks to the blockchain having a decentralized network of computers validating all operations, and every user who decides to validate Bitcoin transaction is known as a miner. That's why you might have heard the term mining Bitcoins. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is giving power back to the common people, since everyone in the world can download Bitcoin software and start trading or mining. However, at first mining Bitcoins was much easier, but over time that has changed. This all sounds great, right, TikTakers? However, as with practically everything in life, cryptocurrencies have their downsides. One main issue with Bitcoin is its volatility. It can have variations of 100% and thus it is not stable at all. Thus, we've seen Bitcoin vary wildly in value over its history. In 2009, each Bitcoin was just a single cent. Very few people were invested in Bitcoin at first, but over time, interest in it kept on growing. Just so you get the picture, in May of 2011, a Bitcoin was worth $35. Then they decreased in value and stabilized at around $2 and $15 in 2012. After that, the digital money became famous in Asia, which increased its value more, reaching $202 in June of 2013. However, that wasn't its peak because it reached $1,203 in September of the same year. This was a huge scandal in the world's financial systems and resulted in several governments taking action. Among them, the Chinese government forbid using Bitcoin as legal tender, and the Central Bank of Argentina also issued an alert. This produced fear in many, and some people decided to get rid of their Bitcoins. Thus, its price descended to $500. However, over time, some governments have actually embraced it. For instance, in 2016, Barack Obama declared Bitcoin as a national currency, opening the doors to the general use of cryptocurrencies. Many interesting things have happened in regards to Bitcoin, such as the sale of the world's most expensive pizza. Are you familiar with it? In May 2010, Laszlo Hynek published on an internet forum that he would pay 10,000 Bitcoins for a couple of pizzas. Most people interpreted that as a joke, and since Bitcoins were still extremely cheap at the time, that message was unnoticed. However, someone accepted the deal, and the purchase was carried out. That sale became the first real-world use of Bitcoin as a payment system. Months later, the price of this cryptocurrency started increasing, and the users from that forum remembered the story of the pizzas. What that man paid for 2 pizzas would translate in May of 2020 as more than $90 million. Because of this, it is said, jokingly, that those were the most expensive pizzas in history, and some even declared May 22nd as the Bitcoin Pizza Day. This curious sale also reflects the instability we were talking about before tiktakers. When someone decides to get Bitcoins or any other kind of cryptocurrency, they do so thinking they will eventually get a financial benefit or will be escaping the conventional monetary system. However, it could also happen that the value of the cryptocurrency falls and the user ends up losing everything. Due to all the fuss around Bitcoin, many companies and developers have decided to launch their very own cryptocurrencies. Facebook was one of them, releasing their cryptocurrency Libra, which allowed the millions of Facebook users to exchange the currency within the Facebook-owned platforms, through simple actions such as making purchases in the Facebook marketplace. Facebook could have ended up creating a parallel banking system, and although it started out strongly, it received harsh criticism by governments. It seems that this resulted in Facebook modifying and adapting their original process of creating a parallel system, and their current goals seem to be different now. In tiktakers, all of this has resulted in traditional banking also trying to modernize and reinvent itself. Either way, as of right now, it seems that this traditional system won't be dethroned anytime soon. As we mentioned before, the cryptocurrency market is very volatile. It has experienced severe crashes at times, resulting in people who invested in cryptocurrencies selling all their remaining coins to keep their money safe. Besides cryptocurrencies, another virtual item which takes advantage of blockchain technology are known as tokens. If you're not familiar with them, here's a quick rundown. A token is a digital representation of any real-world thing. A token can represent a house, a share from a company, a collectible, anything. They can also be used as a way of payment and exchange, although their main function is to represent objects. This technology facilitates exchanges and transactions over the internet, since they allow users to buy different services within the digital world. With the cryptocurrency revolution, many people started exchanging those tokens of different projects in the secondary market. And when cryptocurrencies were crashing, there were people who felt the need to sell out their bitcoins, but still wanted to be part of this digital world. Thus, another figure in this world of cryptocurrencies was born: the stablecoins. A stablecoin is, as its name indicates, a cryptocurrency which remains stable thanks to guarantees around it. This supposes that you can still participate in the world of cryptocurrencies, but without all the instability. All these technologies have created a series of infrastructures for tokenization. That means for us to be able to represent in the digital world our ownership of real-life goods, holding that representation in a blockchain, and then being able to trade it. We have the technology and the coins, but the last thing missing are the corresponding regulations, which experts seem to be working on. And just so you get an idea about the importance of tokenization, this will make it easier, for instance, for someone to purchase a share of a Picasso painting. It might be impossible for that person to buy the entire painting, but they can still own a small portion of it. We know this sounds like crazy TikTakers, but the truth is that in the future, it is very likely that these terms will become way more common. And the funniest thing is that even memes have found their way into cryptocurrencies. One such example is Dogecoin, which started as a joke but ended up becoming a real project. So we hope that you now understand the world of cryptocurrencies a little bit better. Let us know in the comments what you think about all of this. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!